Sydney is a city built on waterways. Darling, named after an early governor I think, is the harbour of the inner city. Once it was a working dock, but nowadays the inner part of the harbour, Cockle Bay, is full of trendy restaurants, high-class shopping arcades and tourist attractions. The city side of the harbour, on the left there, is called Cockle Bay Wharf. As well as the boat marina, it has some of the city's most highly awarded restaurants. They're certainly very popular. On the far side of Cockle Bay, across the Piermont Bridge which carries the monorail, is Harbour side. More restaurants and also a very modern shopping centre. Ferries dock at King's Wharf on the far side of the Piermont Bridge. You can see the Sydney Harbour Bridge further downstream from here. The Typhoon served up really nice Thai food, and we went back on Valentine's Day, when just about the entire population of Sydney seemed to be dining out. Unfortunately, they were a bit overwhelmed with the numbers that day and had some problems keeping track of orders. The weather was cold and windy in Sydney, and round about now it turned rainy as well. The overhead motorways came in useful as shelters, and the harbour looked even more spectacular, with wet walkways reflecting all the light as well as the water. But eventually we decided that the rain wasn't going to stop anytime soon, so like most other people there, we headed damply back to the monorail station. Sydney Harbour is also a blaze of lights at night, especially when it's got a ship like the QE2 moored in it. It was quite a surprise to see it again. It was in Auckland when we were there. Mind you, with the bridge to the left and the Opera House to the right, the passengers must have been a bit more impressed than they would have been by the old tin shed they were greeted with in New Zealand. As well as ferries, water taxis like this are a popular way to get around. They and the ferries can be picked up at Circular Quay, which is just to the right there. The ferries connect with a heap of areas on both shores of the harbour. They're quite cheap, and they run frequently from about 7 in the morning until about 10 at night. On the Opera House side of Circular Quay, there's a walk past a selection of shops and restaurants which caused a bit of a stir when they were built. There weren't supposed to be any buildings around the Opera House which might interfere with the view, and these certainly do from the city side. The Opera House was started in 1959. It was eventually completed in 1973. 14 years is rather a long construction time, but the Aussies must be pretty happy with it now. You can see the buildings on the right that all the fuss was about, and they're not a pretty sight. On the left are the Royal Botanical Gardens. I think this particular shell houses the Opera House's signature restaurant, Binalong. When it comes to interesting views, these guys must have a cracker. Here's some more guidebook stuff. The Harbour Bridge is 134 metres high, 502 metres long, and 48.8 metres wide. It weighs 52,800 tonnes and took 9 years to construct between 1923 and 1932. There's a lookout in the pylon closest to the city, with 200 stairs to the top. That area on the city side of the bridge is called the Rocks. It was settled by troops and convicts in 1788. And for those who think a mere 200 steps up a pylon aren't enough of a challenge, there's always the bridge climb, not for the faint-hearted. And that includes me.